Well, hello and welcome to Code3 Conversations. I want to welcome you in to the community and into the conversation. I am CC Strong and this is Code3 Conversations. A few housekeeping rules. First of all, take a deep breath and relax. This is not a newscast. This is not something that is stiff. This is relaxed. The idea and the premise of Code3 Conversations is to discuss the things that we don't discuss. A lot of time in social media, you'll see people with the same scripted things, that bad word, the police. And then I pay your salary, so you have to do what I say. And chipping back and forth. He should have just complied. I'm sure you've heard it all. But I'm asking that you, first of all, have something to drink or something to snack on, because you'll see me from time to time taking a sip as we're moving along. Well, we at Code3 Conversations believe in the riots method. Yes, you heard that correctly. Riots. First of all, be respectful. Please be respectful. If you decide to come over onto the panel and we have a conversation, we can agree to disagree, but we like to keep it respectful. The I is for integrity. Anything that you share, especially if it's something about in the news or whatever's going on in our world, I just ask that it be real and legitimate and that you have some source to back it up. Oh, be open minded. This is new, and it's basically for the community and law enforcement to finally have those deep dive conversations that you're not going to have anywhere else. The last two letters, the T and the S, are truth and also support and to share. That is what we want. We want you to be truthful about whatever it is. Give us the true transparency, the raw of whatever it is that you are feeling, and be sure that you share. Well, as always, I have my now partner in crime. I've been able to strong arm, no pun intended, my husband into actually joining me on this platform. And between us, the both of us have a total of 62 years in law enforcement. It's a lot of years, but we are in no way perfect. And I believe that I am forever a student of leadership. Holding positions in leadership doesn't automatically mean that you absorb all of that and that you retain it all. It is a constant seeking to climb higher and to do better. So, Eric, you got any words for us before I get started and we actually hit that button and start the PowerPoint? What you thinking about? What are you sipping on? I should ask. I've got water.
Oh, me, I'm just sipping on water.
Mm, okay. What?
Just sip,
Any?
just sipping on water.
Just sipping on water.
Just
So what do
sipping
you
on
say
water.
we get started and actually share the PowerPoint and
I'm
hit
good.
that first
Let's go.
topic? Let's
Come on,
go.
let's go.
Let's go. So once again, CC Strong, Code3 Conversations. I gave you all of those housekeeping rules, and we're gonna hit that PowerPoint and see what our first conversation topic will be. Bad news, extra, extra. Oh, this is about the press. Negative headlines and the press. So, my take on it is that I am so tired of seeing fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement. And yes, I use that term loosely because I don't, me personally, think that someone who is truly a brother and sister in the uniform, they're out there doing something wrong. But of course, those are the headlines you see. It's the negative press, it's the excessive force, it's the things that, quite honestly, I don't believe in at all. I don't support, I don't condone it, and nor will I ever defend it. But we have so many negative headlines, and in the press, you see it constantly, all the time. So that means that it does happen, and people need not ignore that or try to excuse it. But let's talk about it. What's the most recent things, Eric, that you've seen here recently that stands out for you?
For me, I think it's become alarmingly clear here recently that people don't watch the news anymore. We
Mhm.
get all of our information and most of our news on social media. There was some really big news that hit, the sheriff's department here in LA. And I asked a lot of people about it, and very few people had really heard about it. And the other thing that I learned is that, as we've all probably, or many of us know, that in social media, it's all based on kind of like these algorithms. Like, what you click on drives what they send you or what shows up in your feed. Um, so I say all that to say this. I find it interesting that I have seen some disturbing things in the media. I saw some things that, have to do with police officers not um, understanding their law, not understanding their role, being biased in some of the things. But I do want to say this. I did see a feed where this deputy in another state took the time to work through with a woman who was in recovery and was having a
Mm,
bad day. And she really, really just did not like police. And he did not feed into it. He did not feed into her negativity. And the way that it ended was basically like, hey, are you okay? Are you having a
mm,
bad day? Do you need this? What can I do for you? And she was basically saying that she was on the verge of maybe harming herself. And he
mm.
worked through this with her and he spent time with her, got her out of the car, ended up giving her a hug. You know
I
what I mean?
think I
And
saw
and
that.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I just want to talk about some of the good stuff also that, law enforcement is out there doing. Um, and this was the epitome of, what we should be doing and what we should be doing in every contact all along. But
Absolutely. And mine was,
social
I'm
media.
sorry, unfortunately, one that popped up in my head was recently something with cryptocurrency and some law enforcement officers getting involved in strong arming some people. And I was like, are you kidding me? And you know what hurts my heart the most
Deputy
is
sheriffs.
exactly. And the fact that the names in the headlines, the longer that I was on and that I'm working, you recognize the names.
Yes.
And sadly enough, you're seeing this name and you're like, okay, and I never say what no one, I never say never and what someone would not do. I have long since realized that is not what I should do. But I always wonder, like, where in the world did you go in that direction? But I do know that there's a shift. You graduate, you're so proud, you're ready to do this. And then all of a sudden, there's this shift into a whole different person. And I guess it depends on who you latch on to. And if someone's jaded, if they're really serious about the profession, or they're feeding into negative. I have uh, something in the chat and I will not give names. I'm going to let you know if you are wanting to come over and join the panel, you can always do that. We welcome that discussion, but I will read what is actually in the chat. And I do see that I have someone with their hand raised and would love to welcome you over. I'm going to address the chat. And Eric had a question. It was mainstream media is selling news. I rely on Black news outlets that are replicable. So Eric's question back, if you could, the person who commented that, what do you mean by selling news? If you could flesh that out for us a little bit more. In the
I mean, I
meantime,
have an idea of what they mean, but I just want to make sure that, I'm clear. And I'm just also I'm wondering if they meant, I rely on Black news outlets that are reliable, or did they mean replicable? I mean, it could go either way. Um, but yeah, we all get our news from different places. But I wanted to comment on what you talk about these deputies, with the cryptocurrency thing. And again, LA County, Sheriff's Department, in the news for this kind of stuff. And I really think that something that we really need to pay attention to is the fact that we're talking about bad news, right? But we also know the media highlights and social media highlights the bad encounters. That's just what people feed on. But there
absolutely.
has to be bad encounters for people to feed on it. So
Touche.
when we're yeah, I mean, so when we're looking at these bad news, I always have this conversation with law enforcement. Oh, well, that's 1 out of 10,000 contacts. You're right. But if the bad contact wasn't there, we wouldn't be looking at it, on social media to begin with. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I mean and if I could just can I no, let's go. Let's go.
I
Let's
yeah,
move on.
I
Yes.
want to give the chance. I did have a
Yeah.
hand raised, and I want to make sure that Miss Vernita Lights, that's what I see on the screen. If you would actually open you can unmute um, and and tell us who you are. I would love for you to come on screen if you would.
No,
We'd
I
love to see you.
can't.
Oh,
I
you can't.
can't.
And
No.
but you know what? Thank you for actually joining us and coming on to this side of with Code 3 Conversations. We welcome you, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I thank you for hosting this forum because we do need dialogue about what's going on. Law enforcement is critical. I have family members who are retired military and also retired from the police force down here in the South. So I'm aware of the conflicting situations that law enforcement officers are confronted with every day. And I've always been raised and acclimated to show respect for those who keep law and order and give the grain of salt in whatever it is you hear about things that are divisive in nature. What I am so deeply concerned about right now is what I see going on, how there are forces outside of law enforcement that are seeking to agitate and create a mutation within the law enforcement infrastructure here in the United States, where we have National Guard bleeding over into the law enforcement role, the local law enforcement role. Um, the National Guard being mobilized from one state and moved like a chess piece into another. So there's this third arm, so to speak, going on that is manipulating the atmosphere, so to speak, and is changing the way in which regular citizens like myself um, perceive and interact with local law enforcement. Now that there's this third arm intruding, and we witness things going on with our neighbors that are extrajudicial and dangerous.
Renita, can I ask you this? Because I'm really just curious. Where you are, has the National Guard, or are you seeing this in your community, in your
No,
neighborhood, or close to you?
no,
Okay.
no, no.
I was just curious what it was like because we haven't seen it. I mean, we've had it here in Los Angeles, but it was such a small area and populace and for a short, limited amount of time. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I don't see that locally down here in South Carolina. Um, but we were talking about headlines and the news, you see, and the news, they blow up a lot of stuff because they are in the business of making money. It's about the ratings and all this other stuff. Okay. But then there is this very real change in what's going on with law enforcement. And I'm concerned that increasingly people, what they see as law enforcement will not be local police officers, but will be somebody else from another state, maybe, that doesn't have the rootedness that local law enforcement will have. The local sheriff's department, they know pretty much everybody what's going on, especially when you're in a small town. And within neighborhoods, they likewise are aware, and they have their way of interacting for good or bad. And people are familiar with these patterns, you know. But then you have other people coming in who are stressed for whatever reasons that may not have nothing to do with what's going on in your neighborhood or your state, and but yet they're put there and told to do a job and trying to follow orders, and within the process of all these crisscrossings of power structures, a lot of people are going to get lost,
And
and
Yes.
what's
hurt.
scary, and what's really scary is you mentioned they're following orders.
Hmm.
Whose orders are they following is what's really
Right.
scary to me, because if it's the National Guard or if it's some of these federal agencies that are coming in and they're following the orders of our current administration, that is scary for me. Um, because they're, you know what I mean, they're not there for the benefit of the community. You
Right.
know, they're there for the
Yeah, there's
benefit
another
of the
agenda.
current administration's wishes and their own personal agenda, if you ask me.
Yeah, because some of them are paid and they get hefty sign-on bonuses and whatnot. So the motivation is not to protect and serve. They have some other motivation. And then a lot of times what you see on the news is their faces are covered up. And we're not used to that from local law enforcement. You know your policemen, for good or bad. You know who they are,
Absolutely.
and they're traceable.
Absolutely.
And because they're traceable, they're accountable. You know, whether
Yeah.
they're given a lot of slack or not, you can at least say, this officer said so and so, or did
Name
so and
tag
so.
on. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They have a
They
yeah.
name
should
tag.
be clearly, if there's nothing wrong, I always say it's kind of like body worn cameras. I never feared wearing a body worn camera because I know I'm not out there doing something that's wrong. So there shouldn't be this fear of their faces being covered up. But with it being from the National Guard, and like Eric was saying, with the federal level and some of these orders and directions that they're told to follow, these are some scary times. They really, really are. I'm happy to hear, like you say, about your local law enforcement. They know the people there. And that's where we're hoping to get to, where the local level, we have more of a camaraderie with the community, because it was never meant for ride in and just level the the ground, lay everybody out, take over and just do people harm. But I like what you're actually saying, because your take on it, Miss uh, Verneda, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, that is
Please,
correct.
Verneda, um, your take on it is exactly what we need, because like Eric and we have an idea of how do we fix this. You have an idea of this is wrong, that we're having people come in with masks on their faces at another level with the military. And just so you know, Eric is a former Marine, because if I say ex-Marine, he'll lose it. And I too served in the military as well with the Army. And so I don't think that it is in any way wise to have what's going on. What we're seeing right now, never in my imagination could I have imagined we would be where we are right now.
I just
It's
want to say this.
really
I'm
sad.
I'm sorry. Let me first say thank you to your family for their service in both the military and
Absolutely.
in public safety. But, I want to say I remember, the 92 riots. And I
Mhm.
remember, after Ferguson, I don't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, CC, but after not only Ferguson, but George Floyd, I don't think we brought the National Guard in even during that time. But
Mhm.
I think the last time the National Guard was deployed here in LA was during the 92 riots.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And they actually end up bringing in the Marine Corps at that time because that was full blown riots. Right now, they are bringing in National Guard to quote unquote do crime prevention. And let me just tell you why that's dangerous. So in the 92 riots, when they brought in the Marine Corps and the National Guard, and they were deployed with police officers, here are some of the things that happened. If a police officer is going to a knock on a door, or if the police officer is even going up to handcuff somebody and they say, cover me, right? Cover for law enforcement means hold the person at gunpoint or make sure that they don't do anything, or you're the backup. When you say cover in the Marine Corps,
And
that means
shoot.
cover fire.
Yes,
That means we're
Exactly.
laying down cover fire. And we actually had police officers that were walking up to a door and they yelled cover, and the Marine Corps lit up the house. I mean, just shot into the house. And so it's very dangerous. You know what I mean? It's very dangerous to bring in a military type operation
Mhm.
into local streets, local communities, local neighborhoods, especially when it's not needed.
Yeah.
It's just it is not good in any way, shape, or form.
hmm,
It's a total power grab is what it is.
yeah,
And those that want to see things done the right way, the voices get kind of drowned out in that. But I encourage, and for those who will see this later with the recording, I encourage you to stay within what you know to do is right. You can never go wrong. And I am living proof that staying within that truth, they can't steamroll over you and get you to do the wrong thing if you remain within policy, within the laws. And those laws don't shift. I want to always reiterate that. They don't shift depending on which neighborhood we're working in. There is no such thing as a change in the laws.
Yeah. Miss Lights, if you don't mind me asking, do you know how big your local agency is, or how big your city or town is? Like how many police officers or sheriffs patrol your area? Is it a big department, small department?
It is a small department. I live near Paris Island. My dad was a
Oh,
Marine, and I
okay.
grew up.
Hoorah.
I grew up with in a community of Montford Point Marines. So
Mm,
these were a community of black men who
Mhm.
were the first to join the United States Marine Corps, and they got the Medals of Honor from President Barack Obama and
Yes.
everything, And they're now all deceased.
mm,
But the children of those Marines have made a choice to stay in the community and grow
mhm.
old here, age in place in the territory that our parents marked out.
Gotcha.
So it's a very small area.
Okay.
It is racially segregated,
Mm,
but I like living in the black community. This is where my parents set down roots, and this is my country. And I
mhm.
don't resent what anyone else has. And they got what they got. I got what I got, and we
Yeah.
nurture what
Well,
we have.
there you
Amen.
go. There you go.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I want to just add this point, when we're talking about law enforcement and we're talking about bad news, bad media, I used to often say that if you ask me, law enforcement is the only profession, the only career that if we do something bad on the LAPD side, it works all the way against us, all the way across the nation to New York PD. And if something happens on the East Coast from New York to Chicago, it ripples all the way across to the West Coast. And when I say that, we become all of them are bad. Every
Mhm.
last one of them are bad. They're all evil. They're all dirty. They're all this. But I want to give you this. So if you go look in the news and you look at, let's just say, a doctor, you know what I mean? And I will tell you this: you have a doctor who has, it's in the news. A man was supposed to get their leg amputated, and the doctor came in, and it was supposed to be the right leg, and actually amputated the left leg accidentally. So what does that mean? He still has to go and cut off the leg that he was supposed to cut off before. We have doctors and dentists that are in the news, that have, sexually assaulted. We had a big thing out here at USC where these doctors were
Mhm.
sexually assaulting, women and people, either while they're under anesthesia but nobody says all doctors are bad. Nobody says all airplane pilots or all sparklets men or all lawyers are bad. In other words, what are you going to say? Where are you going to go when you get sick? You're just not going to go to that doctor, but you're going to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I'm going to go to my doctor. My doctor's fine." But, the thing about law enforcement is that when something happens bad, people attack the entire profession, and I,
Absolutely.
and I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, because in a lot of neighborhoods, and depending on, it doesn't matter where you live, a lot of people, a lot of communities have shared experiences with law enforcement, so I say if there was no bad news to talk about, we wouldn't have bad news to talk about.
Absolutely. And we are grateful for you, Miss Lights, coming over and joining in the panel. And I am going to actually move to our next topic so that we can keep moving forward. And this one basically is the impact of negative press. And I am going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to push past this one. We spent quite a bit of time on it, and actually read about the impact of negative press, the erosion of the public trust. Negative press can diminish community confidence in law enforcement, making productive relationships more difficult to maintain. The effects on morale and recruitment. Intense media scrutiny can lower officer morale and hinder recruitment, impacting agency effectiveness. This one hits home for me, and I'll pause here only to say I would implore young people to not run from, but run into. Be a part of that shift and that change. I know that sounds crazy because in some communities, and I always say I grew up in the CPT, as people say, straight out of Compton. But my thought process is I could actually be part of something better, some type of change. Instead of it being the normal or societal norm that people just figured that there was no way to be part of the solution. I have 30 years of proof that there is. And even having the backlash and hellacious thing that happened to me during my last couple of years of my career. And I blame Eric because he ran for sheriff and I was politically targeted. But because of the same things that I'm talking about, you can bounce back. You just got to know how to go about that and to do things the right way. And luckily, an arbitration win proved that I was telling the truth. Push for accountability and reform. Widespread negative coverage often leads to increased calls for accountability and policy changes within law enforcement. And I will also say here that we're always talking about the need for policies. I think we got so many policies, we're blue in the face. What we have to do is actually start doing what is written. And we cannot, and I have to emphasize this, we cannot shift it to fit where some suffer as a result of certain laws and rules and others do not. That is a bigger problem than trying to write yet another policy that's going to go on a shelf and collect dust. If there's nothing else with that, I'm
Can
sure
I
you're
say
going to
on that
have
real
one
quick?
on that.
I,
Yes.
I do. I do. Having worked internal affairs, for several years and the unit commander of advocacy bureau, that's what we did. We investigated policy violations. We, reviewed policy violations. A lot of people always want a policy for something, as CC just said. And I'm here to tell you that there's probably already a policy for it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the key. Do the decision makers hold the personnel accountable to the policy? With so much cronyism and nepotism, you know what I mean? They hold certain people accountable, but not others. Or what
Absolutely.
happens is just think about who the decision maker is, who the executive is. Let's really think about that. That executive is a person that typically usually came up through the department, right? Maybe when that policy came out, they didn't like it. They didn't agree with it. They were a deputy once before. They were a police officer once before. And if they don't agree with a policy, if they don't like it when it came out, if they didn't necessarily think it supported them, does their mindset automatically change just because they got promoted? No. So, so many people are looking at accountability for the line personnel, for the people that are in the black and whites, for the people that are working the jails, when we miss the fact that there's not accountability for the decision makers, for the executives, which are the leaders that are supposed to be holding that accountability to those that are beneath them. So just wanted to say that on policies. We probably have a policy for it, especially in the LA County Sheriff's Department, because our policy is volumes and volumes and volumes thick.
Absolutely.
How many people really know what the policy is, though?
Absolutely. And
You
I
can
see
write
that
yourself out of things. You can
we
write
have
yourself out.
we have another person who is wanting to speak. I'm going to bring them over, and at the same time, we're going to move on over to the next topic. And we welcome in. I don't know, so I'm just going to say Martin because I see C.A. Martin on the screen. But why don't you go ahead and unmute for us and join us in the discussion?
Good evening.
Good evening. Are we able to see you on camera, or you prefer not to? No pressure.
I honestly just logged in, so I haven't seen what all it's doing here.
Okay.
I don't see where. Wait. Well, there's that. I don't see where the camera
If
icon is actually.
If you go down where you unmute, there should be a little icon next to it that looks like a video camera. If you click on that, you should be able to open your camera.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, and it's not there.
You can't see it. Okay. Well, we're listening to you.
All right, very good. My something that just came up rings very true, which is there may already be a policy, as he said, and I think even you alluded to something like that as well. And this brings up, as a civilian, just so you know, I've never been police. I've been supportive of police, but I also had, through my teens, mostly in Albuquerque, who tend to show up in a lot of true crime shows. I had the police that I used to joke that I knew the flavor of paint colors blindfolded, because as a long-haired teen in Albuquerque in the 80s, I was bounced off the hood of every police car in town. even though
Hmm.
I wasn't anything. I was a real easy target though, because one of the things that apparently meant trouble back then was a long-haired kid in a rock t-shirt,
Got it.
as opposed to gang colors a few years later or whatever. Anyway, moving on. But the concern that would come to me is there are so many laws that the citizens don't know about, but ignorance is not an excuse. But there's reams and reams and reams of laws that none of us have ever seen, heard of, don't have the time or the attention span to keep up with. And ditto, there's so many policies. How do we know even how to begin to hold police, as you said, accountable? Which is my big thing with police. I've known as many good ones as I've known the other, and I tried desperately to defend them. I live up by Seattle right now where they can't hire police because they turned on them so bad in the last administration.
Mm.
I mean, a cop up here starts at over $100,000 a year, and they are still way behind in hiring. They advertise on the radio relentlessly because the city chased off so many police after the George Floyd thing. But we don't have the time to go through the undoubtedly reams and reams of policies to know even what accountability we're holding police to, except for hopefully have your cameras on, hopefully don't engage in violence against unarmed citizens, and well, God, not much more than that, honestly. And that
You know, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we don't even know what we're holding you accountable to, and you practically have to be a Mensa member legal specialist to be able to even explain the bare bones of it. And
Mm.
I'll probably know.
Yeah. If I can adjust that real quick, you're right. First of all, you are absolutely right. But one of the things I could tell you that is very important and with accountability and transparency is to have public facing policies. Right now you can go and you can look up. So, in other words, most people don't pay attention to something until it impacts them. But as soon as it
Mhm.
impacts them, you can go and you can get on this little thing, this little phone, and you can talk into it and you can Google anything like, what is the law for, throwing chicken feathers out the window? And you'll get an answer.
Mhm.
And, penal codes, welfare and institution codes, business and profession codes, vehicle codes, they're all public facing. That means if you get a ticket for speeding, you can go and Google, well, I don't remember, 23-152 or whatever it is now. No, that's something else. But you can go and Google what the vehicle code is, and it will give it to you right away. Law enforcement for many, many years has hidden behind that. And what they'll tell you is, oh, well, we can't let the public know our policies because then it'll put us at danger. No, it won't.
No.
We can't let the public know what our tactics are. We don't necessarily want them to know what our movement and things are, maybe how we do certain investigations, but we can have public facing policy. That's called transparency. So, Martin, you're absolutely right. And that's something that, law enforcement needs to be held accountable to. Because, in other words, when a police officer pulls you over and just, let's say they put you on the hood of the car and you get to taste those paint chips, you should be able to go and look at the policy and say, can you do this? When can you do this? Is it proper to do this in this situation? And so those are the things that that real transparency is about. And I will just say this, and we don't have it mainstream. We don't have it. We do have some public facing policies, but I guess what I'm saying in short is I agree with you. It does take a mountain of paperwork and reams to go through it, but we should have policies where if something impacts you, you can go to that public facing policy, do a search, and it should bring up, at least the top 3 to 5 policies that address what you're looking for to kind of make it easy for you. That's what we
And I
have on the inside. That's
and
what
I
we
would
have on the inside.
add, I would add that when it's up to us as law enforcement officers. And I hate to I'm not bad mouthing because believe me, at 30 years, up until this past February, I was a law enforcement officer on duty. I'm not bashing that,
Thank you
but
for that.
citizens don't And I'm sorry, Martin, I missed it.
I was just saying thank you for that. Like I
Oh,
said, I'm in an area where they literally can barely hire police even at six figures because uh frankly the politicking eroded public trust, while at the same time the public was going, hey, why is crime getting so bad? It was maddening to watch.
and
On
it sadly enough, I grew up in a neighborhood, Martin, to share with you, in a neighborhood where it was pretty harsh where police were concerned. When you speak about not having the knowledge of the policies, you couple that with you just didn't have a voice at all. Just don't say anything. You know, shut up, I'm doing my job. So I can see all the angles from that. And I can truly say that the onus is on us as law enforcement officers to know those policies much more than you having to go and look them up. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, we don't even have to get to that point. Because when your hands are on the hood of that car, you're not going to whip out your phone. You can later on find out what it is, but in the heat of the moment, those are critical moments that turn south really, really quickly. And a lot of it is that the officer needs to be aware of what they can and cannot do. And it can't just be street taught. It's a such thing as your training officer training you in a certain manner, but you also have to know yourself to go and get some of that information. I could have a bad training officer that's teaching me the wrong thing. And I'm thinking that I'm doing everything 100% right, but I'm not. I mean, you've got to be a little bit nosy as a law enforcement officer, in my opinion, to actually want to know what those laws are. And it starts at the very bare minimum of basic human decency. And everyone is human that we come in contact with. I don't remember pulling over a dog driving a vehicle ever in my career, any type of animals. I deal
we
with
don't
people.
identify us nowadays.
Exactly. I would have license sirens and he'd be hanging out of the window with his tongue wagging in the wind, right? But all that to say that it's on us to know what those policies are, and we have to do better with enforcing them the right way. And it starts with removing your own personal, whatever it is you're feeling in the moment. I may not like the color green, and this guy's wearing a green shirt. Doesn't matter. What am I there for? What should I be saying? What should I be doing? What did he do? Is he committed a crime or all the elements there? He's going to jail. If he was stopped, and there's plenty of times where, hey, you know what? You're speeding. Slow down. I'm going to give you a warning this time. There's spirit of the law, there's letter of the law, but we need to know a lot of the letter of the law. And I'm being honest, we need to also have some people lean into the spirit of the law because you get these chipping back and forth. The person's complaining, the officer, you can't tell me what to do. I'm a law enforcement officer, but they're not realizing this is still an adult. And wise is the person who is able to use the gift of gab over their equipment. When you see the officers just going level 10 right into something, 9 times out of 10, and you can challenge me on this and tell me I'm wrong, it's out of fear. They don't know how to talk to people. They're not sure about what they can and cannot do. So they refer to, hey, I got this badge, I got this gun belt on. You better listen to me. So,
I'm just going to jump in with that real quick. Martin, what CC is talking about, and I don't know if you know the spirit of the law, letter of the law. What
mm,
is the law? What is the purpose of it? And I'll just use the speeding example, right? There is nothing that says that if I pull you over for speeding, I must write you a ticket, right? Speeding is the ability, or it gives me the reason to pull you over. But what is really the spirit of the law is to get you to slow down and to be safer. I don't necessarily have to write a ticket for the guy who has been speeding because his wife's in the car and her water just broke, or you know what I mean, their mother's on their deathbed, and or something tragic, or but the guy that's just racing his car because he's a young man or got a souped up car and wants to show off, different things, spirit of the law, letter of the law. And I
Well,
just want to end with this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
we just had an infamous. There's a kid who had that Charger Hellcat or whatever up here, or Challenger Hellcat.
mm,
I guess he had a big YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or channel or something where he would film himself, driving. I mean, I think those, I don't know, I know they're aerodynamic bricks, but they might be 200-mile-an-hour capable cars. And he infamously was filming himself ripping around Seattle neighborhood streets in a 700 horsepower car at all speeds. And it's a big deal up here. It may not be a big deal nationwide, but it took him forever to actually get even like a month. I think he got house arrest or something, and they finally did impound his car. But yeah, he certainly makes a case for the latter on speeding. Although, and you can make me sit down and raise my hand again later for this, but I do want to know, with accountability being a thing, and this is something I know a lot of citizens are freaking out about right now, and it has to do with the current administration and the fact that they protect the identities of ICE agents. And I know that's specialized law enforcement and it's federal and it's a mess. But the fact that if I have an officer who, when I was a teenager, and that was pre-Google, I wouldn't have known what my rights were, who did bounce me off the hood of his Dodge Diplomat. That aged me right there. I could at least complain because Officer Miller or Gutierrez or whatever on badge number 78467 was what I felt abusive to me. If there's an ICE agent and they're protecting their identities now, that sends a terrifying message to us lowly civilians out here. And I was wondering what your take was on that. I know you're not behind the policy. I don't hold you responsible for it, but it's got to affect you.
It absolutely does.
Yeah,
And
it does. Yeah, I have to agree.
it does. And to be in all full transparency, Martin, I don't like it. I was speaking earlier and I said wearing a body worn camera, for instance. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to, I don't have to hide behind anything. My name tag doesn't have to be a hidden. I don't have to cover my badge up and you can't have my badge number. I could care less. Call and report me and then let it actually come out, whatever really took place. With everything that I'm seeing, sadly enough, a lot of people became very aware. And you mentioned earlier about George Floyd and that incident, that him being killed that way. People realize things that affect them the most. And growing up where I did, Martin, honestly, there was the same terror that a lot of people are feeling now. That was for some people every day, just walking down the street. And they would you'd get snatched up just because, you kind of look a little weird or you look a little suspicious. So it's terrifying. That was the word that popped in my mind when you said what your thought is, because now it's at an even higher level and it's, to me, out of control. And I'll tell you this, living in Los Angeles, at the time that the media showed that there were these horrible riots that were going on in the street, I literally remember driving around in the same areas that were claimed that they were having these riots, and then this need for this heavy force and show of corralling or, whatever you want to call it, having this public safety. The streets were quiet. There were probably 2 blocks that had people marching up and down the streets. But yet, by the time it reaches the media, we're horrible. It's the people in the
About 2 or
streets
3
are,
blocks.
yeah, it was not what we're seeing. So the media hype could be going either way. But when I see someone covering up their faces, especially in all of the back and forth, and people were angry at, some people wanted to wear masks, some didn't want to wear masks. And a lot of people were fighting about that type of thing. But mask now suddenly, and this is just my heart, transparency, now all of a sudden it's okay covering your face. It's for a different reason, mind you, but I think it's horrible, in all honesty, because there should be some accountability there.
Yeah. And I give you my opinion in short. I think it's cowardice. I think that there's no, they're using the type of tactics that they use in different countries. The military does these kind of tactics in different countries where they have no identification, they have no rank, so that the enemy cannot identify who the leader is, and that would be who they would want to take out further. So these are kind of like international military style tactics. And I will just tell you this, and this is what I'm seeing. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. We're talking about press and news. what I'm seeing may not be the only thing. Let me put this disclaimer on, maybe not be the only thing, but I was that guy years ago that was on a SWAT team that was the first one going in the door when I knew somebody was on the other side that said, I got a gun, I'm not going back to prison, you're not going to take me alive, or they had committed some kind of heinous crime. And it was the SWAT team that had to go in and get them. So I will tell you this, I am not impressed at all with what I'm seeing with ICE running into neighborhoods, going into jobs, going to car washes, and grabbing women and men off of the street. If you are going, here's my thing. According to all of the research that I've done, ICE is using paycheck stubs and tax returns to find people. How do you know they're working at the car wash? So in other words, you're saying that, the reason that we're doing this is because, they're a drain on society and they're taking all the resources, but you got a tax return. So ICE would impress me if they did go find some of the murderers, if they did go find some of the child molesters, some of the rapists, some of the go kick in those doors. Go kick in those doors and get those criminals. And then maybe I would have some semblance of respect for what they're doing. But right now, I think they're cowards, and I don't have any respect or any appreciation for what they're doing, at least for what I'm seeing.
I concur completely. I've kind of figured from just listening to you too that would be your response. I've just strange times we're living in, and I will say, and something I've said for some years now, is one of the worst things that we ever did was create catered news. In that, if you want your news filtered leaning right or left or whatever, there's several networks to choose from that basically will take out the inconvenient and feed you the agenda with a news item kind of attached to it. That's carefully filtered to show one side. I mean, even the George Floyd thing, there was a movie that came out later that just had the cam footage. It didn't make, I can't remember the cop's name, but it didn't make them look much better, but it did show how off his rocker George was. And it came out years later. And it was attached to and it was gloriously unnarrated. It was basically, here's the data, here's the cam reports, here's this. And it's one of those things, nothing excuses the Rodney King beatings, but clipping those first couple of minutes of him jumping out of the car and attacking the police being omitted probably made the riots worse than they would have been if you would have seen that he was off his nut when he jumped out of the car.
A lot of it leans to, and then we're going to move on to the next one. We want to try to get in some of the topics, but a lot of it leans to the tactics. And at some point, it's excessive and overkill. It's not even some of the things, the clips that we miss. And I agree with you, when we don't see the full picture of anything, it leaves so many different interpretations. But some of the things from a law enforcement standpoint is literally that what you're seeing in that little small clip, you could pick apart, and knowing that there is no way that once somebody's laid on the ground, they're down. There's so many different things there's so many things that we can do now to transition that person to the next step through a process. Really, it is. But our next topic, and I would love for you to hang around with us, Martin, and as well as Miss Lights, is cronyism, nepotism, and the other isms. And we often see, and I always kind of get them mixed up, and I'm going to attempt, because I think cronyism is when your friends are the ones you're taking care of, and nepotism is the ones when you're taking care of family. Something throughout my time in law enforcement, I have seen quite a bit, has been a lot of family members. And I can speak to this with a whole lot of subject matter expert behind it. I was a drill instructor for 5 years on our sheriff's department campus. And I can tell you that there were several times when phone calls were made and there was the idea that, hey, my cousin is going to be in this upcoming class. Can you do a favor and make sure that they get their, like wink, wink, taking care of them? And I'm going to be honest with you. Those calls were coming from very high up. Eric spoke about it earlier when he was talking about the leadership. And we talk about the troops and what they're doing wrong, and we speak about what they need to be doing better on the streets. But none of that is actually able to happen if it's being left unchecked and no one's addressing it. I say the same with the cronyism and the nepotism, and hopefully we don't have to even get too deep into those other isms. But I'm here to tell you, every single one of those ism cousins exists within our department. And until we address them, we will never move forward. We really won't, because you're getting the same behaviors repeated. If Uncle Charlie, Uncle, Bill, Uncle Sam, whoever it is, was once an officer and now he's telling his sons, this is how we used to do it, and it's filtered down and we've never actually changed, but yet we're changing all these policies. What are we really doing? And I would love to hear your thoughts, my amazing panel here. Let's talk
Yeah,
about it.
I will say this. Yes, we've both seen that. Let me just back up 1 minute because I saw a comment on in the chat. I want to make sure we don't. I did not see any reason for the death of George Floyd and Rodney King to not jump out fighting. You know, I agree with you 100%. There was no reason for that. All of that could have been avoided. I've been in situations very similar to both of those, and those were both very, very tragic incidents that should have never occurred. And I know we're moving on. Maybe we can have another discussion on another date about those things in depth to really pick apart those things. But here's my thing on the cronyism and
Before you
nepotism.
get that, before you do, Eric, since you did touch back, I'm just going to note my team will grab that. So I know that my staffs are noting that, and we'll actually address that for the person who put that in the chat. So I'm just going to make sure my team's, I'm sure they're on it, but they'll have that for our next, and we will use it as a topic. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
So, when we're talking about this cronyism and nepotism, when you really look at the slide there, this is my nephew Skippy. He's your new boss. I love it, right? Because that's where the problem comes in. The problem really comes in when you're putting unqualified people in the position because of the relationships. We had a sheriff many 2 terms ago that on day one he literally wiped away the top 16 or 17, 15 to 17, whatever it is, of the brass in the sheriff department. He really just got rid of the brain trust. And then what did he start doing? He started putting all of his friends in and all of his supporters in, unqualified, inexperienced, skipping multiple ranks, and it really, really it created a big domino effect, and it was a big transition for the department going downhill fast, and it hasn't slowed down yet. But
Sounds like something going on right now somewhere.
yes, it absolutely. I mean, you think about it, maybe just on a much bigger scale, right? You know what I mean, in our entire government. But yeah, the thing about the cronyism thing is, and CC mentioned, getting those phone calls from the family members. Listen, I don't have a problem with what we would call legacy hires. I don't have a problem because you should know that, if there's parents in there or if there's a good connection with good quality people of character and values, then you kind of know that you're probably getting people, as they say, from good stock. They had a good upbringing, you know what I mean? They understand what it's like, and they should understand. But the problem is when I'm starting to call the drill instructor and say, hey, take care of my person. Because if I'm going to send somebody that's family or friend through the academy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that they're properly prepared. I'm going to make sure that they have all the information and the skills to be successful. Not giving them the answers, not cheating, but I'm going to do what I can. And we have pre-academy programs. I remember even going into boot camp. We had pre-boot camp, where they're getting you ready. And I'm going to tell that person, you better not go in there and embarrass me. I'm putting my name to you. So, but we're calling and saying, hey, can you kind of, take care of them?
It
Maybe
happens a
they're a little out
lot.
of shape, or hey, you know what I mean? They didn't, oh, they were up late. We had a family get together and it was a reunion, and, can you give them a break because they showed up and maybe they didn't stay? No, no, that's not the way it works.
And
You give your,
I
right.
don't have a problem either, Eric, with the, legacy, as you say. But I can tell you, if I was putting a percentage to it, probably 75% of those phone calls, wink, wink, hint, hints, the person wasn't actually on fire to be there in the first place. And then they sat back. One of the chat comments is, I think we should be treating a person on their own merits. Nepotism causes entitlements. Hats off to that commenter, because that is exactly what I would have to deal with. And I would have not just that, but the hey from my supervisors. How's this person doing? Well, they're not doing too well. I had one particular recruit who struggled on many levels, was actually on the firing line one day and was tapping the bottom of her weapon and spun around in the direction for help, but the muzzle of the gun is pointing toward everybody. They said they had never seen me run that fast to grab both her and the weapon at the same time, because I was like, this is people's safety. I get it that your mother's, father's, grandmother's, cousin's parakeet was a law enforcement officer, but it's not an automatic that that's what your wheelhouse is. Now, if that kid came up and they're watching you and they want to be a part of it, and that's what their dream is, then you start feeding and pouring into them just like you require of them good grades. Show them the proper thing and then tell them, don't embarrass me. Don't go thinking you got to sit back. You're going to have to pull your weight. You're going to have to get in shape. You're going to have to come and bring everything that you have. Give it your all, because we as drill instructors want to see them succeed. Yeah, we're yelling at them and the hats can it down and we're screaming in their face, but we want to see them succeed. But I had to tell this particular person, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you are in your academy training? And the response was a 9. I sat at my desk and I was just shaking my head. And my final report to the lieutenant at the time was that, based on the fact that this person feels that they are near perfect, there is nothing for me to work with. They have no idea, no thought that they need any type of work, because if you're at a 9, you're ready to graduate. We're never perfect. There is no 10. But if you're in your mind not addressing the fact that you're struggling, that's going to have to be, we need to take a step back and then start in a better direction for ownership. And that same word that Martin was talking about earlier, where is that accountability? Because that officer is going to be okay with, hey, the bare minimum, I got passed on through. So, hey, let's go. What's going to stop me from passing on through when I do something wrong when I'm in uniform? And I'm not blaming all who are legacy hires. Let me be clear so people don't think that I'm saying that's a bad thing. But if you were such a good officer, bring your child, cousin, uncle, whoever it is, and tell them, don't mess up that good name, that good reputation, and help them be able to navigate that. That's my opinion.
And you have inside knowledge of what to expect. And when I say inside knowledge, you've been through the academy. You know what the department's like. You have an advantage over somebody that doesn't have that in their family by just helping them get prepared. Now, again, not giving them answers, but hey, listen, I'm going to take you and help you get over the wall. Hey, I'm going to help you, learn how to navigate the obstacle course. Hey, I'm going to tell you
Absolutely.
that, listen, upper body strength is big because you do a lot of push-ups, you do a lot of pull-ups. These are the kind of things that I'm going to take you to the range, and we're going to get you, very, very confident and proficient with shooting before you go. So these are the kind of things that you can do to help them be properly prepared, so that it lightens the stress on them when it comes to the physical fitness. You know what I mean? They're in good shape. So physical fitness isn't a stress for them. When it comes to going to the range can be very stressful. And there's a lot of people that go there and that's the first time that they ever handled a weapon or fired a weapon. So there's lots of ways that you can prepare them I don't understand how you just walk in asking for, hey, make sure you look out for my person, and you didn't do your part. Yeah, there's something wrong with that.
Right, it ranked right up there with mothers that would come in with their kids for being fitted for their uniforms. I love it. I love the family. But please come on family day. Let them pick out their own uniform and get it sized. And this is coming from a hover mother. I get it. I want to be there with my kid for everything as well. But the cronyism and the nepotism and the ism cousins, as I say, keep us stuck. We can't move forward into a good direction if those things drain the life out of all that training that they say we still need to do, and the accountability and the policies being followed. It just drains the life out of the whole entire operation.
And I'll add this last part. When you look at this, is my nephew Skippy. He's your new boss. In our organization, I'll say this: what's the purpose? Why do you want all of your friends, and family to be in the top positions, right? Especially if they don't know much. Number one is, who are they going to go to when something happens and they want the direction on how to do it? They're going to come to
Absolutely.
you and you're going to tell them what to do. And so therefore there's really only one message, one way in that department, and it's your way. So
Yeah.
of course they want people, and this is what I say all the time in the LA County Sheriff's Department, getting into the executive ranks is just a tap on the shoulder.
Mm,
There's no test.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's very different from most other agencies. So when there's no test, I just get to pick the person that I know is going to deliver my message my way, when I tell them to, where I tell them to, and how I tell them to. And then, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to tap you on that shoulder and say, okay, come on, you get the promotion. And so you don't properly train them, you don't properly prepare them. You just let them know, hey, do what I tell you to do it how I tell you to do it, and that's really one of the biggest problems with nepotism and cronyism.
Yeah.
They always
And
owe you something.
that nephew of yours has been struggling and this is not him. You need to get him another profession. Maybe
Right.
this is just not his thing. And I see Miss Lights, you have your hand raised. Please come on in the room and tell us what you have, what your thoughts
Yeah,
are.
well, I just wanted to mention that there are other isms that piggyback on cronyism and nepotism. You have the racism that slides in there because birds of a feather flock together. And so when you bring your cronies on board, if you're a racist, chances are your cronies are racist. You know,
Mm,
if you're a sexist, chances are your crony is a sexist person. And the same thing with nepotism. If you're a racist, well be that your relative is a racist also.
yeah.
And that,
And coming from my standpoint, Miss Lights, I get it from all directions. You
yeah,
can I can tell you we could have some serious conversations about
yeah,
those type of thing. And
yeah,
I always say that I'm both plus one. So I
mhm,
am both a black person and a law enforcement officer and that added component
mhm,
with the sexism, because
yeah,
there's a whole lot of that too, and the need to actually pack your mud, so to speak, or they're testing to see, is she gonna know what she's doing? Does she know what she's, what's she gonna bring to the table? And I found a lot of times that one of the keys, because I'm not a very tall person at all, but one of the things that I was really good at was talking to people. And I believe that the things that we use before we even get to our gun belt and equipment are the most important.
yeah,
How
soft
do we
skills.
Yes. How do we
Mhm,
communicate and talk to people? And it starts at that point. And if, like you were saying, if you have preconceived notions, if you have your racism, if you have your biases, if you have your just disdain, it could be men just can't stand women. I caught it even from becoming a law enforcement because of where I grew up. I was saying, well, why would you want to be a cop? People from our neighborhood don't become cops. And if I listened to everything that people had to say, I wouldn't have anywhere near some of the successes and actually three grown children that are doing very, very well. I would not
mhm,
have, I've not have gone after the things in life that I needed to. And my thought was, I want to make a difference. I
yeah,
want to serve other people because so many people are selfish in this world, and I don't want to be one of them. That job is already taken. It really
mhm,
is. It really,
mhm,
really is.
yes.
Anything else before we move on?
I think we hit that one pretty good.
We did. So I'm going to move on, and I think we're going to go past. I want to get to the actual, uh, instead of reading through each of these slides, I am going to go to the other. I'm going to fast forward us a little bit. And I think we've been kind of touching on this one. This one's a huge one. And it is politics and policing. And I think right out of the gate, we started talking about our current situations and what's happening on the streets and with the military right now. For me, I know that with our department, we have a policy that basically states that we are not to do anything dealing with politics while on duty. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. It speaks to actually in uniform, and there's certain things you cannot do while you're in uniform, but there is nothing that says that you cannot during your own time as far as politics are concerned. I am of the philosophy that the moment that you let politics and your mindset of how you vote or how you view things into that traffic stop, into that response to someone's house, into how you feel about somebody, and then you throw and layer those isms on top of it, those are the key problems that we are seeing within our departments and agencies today. That's my opinion. And that $10 may not get you a train ride, but it is my opinion that we pour too much of sides of the aisle, and these folks are doing this and these folks are doing that. The moment that you lump any person or group of people into one mold, you lose because you don't know. And I don't know the what, 8 billion people I think we're on Earth. I could be wrong in that number. You can look it up and laugh at me later. But I don't know every person, and every encounter is different. But I do know that we are spiraling further and further down the more that we blur the lines of politics and policing.
We talk about this a lot, we really do. And, the reality of it is this, is that if I'm responding to a call for service, whatever that may be, whether it's a burglary, whether it's a domestic violence, whether it is a car accident, whatever it is, I should not be going in any way, shape, or form saying, well, let me ask you this. Are you a Democrat or you're a Republican before I determine how I'm going to handle the call? None of that should matter. None of it should matter what way we go, and we treat people with decency and respect. And I started this profession in the early 90s. And I could tell you this, that in the early 90s, being around law enforcement my entire adult life, I never, ever remember conversations in briefing. I don't remember conversations in the radio car with my partners. I don't remember conversations, and obviously, we didn't have the Facebook and everything like that, about who the president was and what party was doing what.
Yeah.
However, somewhere around 2016, 2012, 2016, this became the topic and a regular conversation and a regular topic of, of discussion all the time. And the interesting thing is this, I've had friends that I've known for 30 years.
Mm.
And they will post things like this on Facebook. If you think this person or this party or this whoever it is good, unfriend me.
Mm.
Or how dare you speak against something that they post on Facebook and give another perspective, then you become a bad, awful, evil person. I mean, I'm talking about people, like I said, that I thought we were friends. And for the first, I don't know, 27, 28 years, we never talked about politics.
Mm-hmm.
Never even came up. But now all of a sudden, within the last 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, politics is the biggest thing, and who's in office is the biggest thing. And if you feel this way, then you can't be my friend. So what were we for the last 25 years? So politics and policing is all bad. And I don't understand why. I mean, I know why, but I mean, I don't understand how this became a thing where people became so disrespectful and
Yeah.
of others based on political stance. And when I use the word respect, here's what I mean. Respect is only needed and comes into play when there's conflict or a difference of opinions. Because if we're all like-minded, then we're all just in concurrence.
Mm.
Respect really comes in when I don't agree with your position, but I respect you enough to allow you to have it and still choose to be in your presence, still choose to be a friend, still choose to respect that we can agree to disagree or we can see things different. And it doesn't matter, in other words, the way that you've treated me and how you've responded to me as an individual is what should matter. But these politics is people are treating people bad just because, hey, and I'll just go red or blue, donkey or elephant, Democrat or regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter. It's just crazy how divisive this world has become or this country has become. And it's unfortunate that law enforcement plays a big role in that divisiveness because
Absolutely.
they
And
have a go ahead. I'm
if
sorry.
you imagine, no, I cut you off. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you did. Yeah, you did.
We
Go ahead.
agree. We don't fight during Code 3 conversations.
Right.
But just imagine for a second, and this is what popped in my head just now, that someone has a sign in their yard, political in nature, and you're called to that home. And because of your views, and you're so steeped and you've been scrolling Facebook all night long, with to the tune of the algorithm that plays into your mindset of you being right about everything and those other people are wrong, and you are in uniform that next day and you walk up into a yard and the opposing side from what you believe in, that's what they have posted in their yard. I would challenge anyone on this, and even in the audience who are not on the panel side, I would challenge anyone to tell me that that does not have an effect on people who, quite honestly, this is my opinion, who are not mature enough to separate. I put the uniform on, there are patches on my shoulder. I am representation of that agency that I'm working with. But underneath that and behind that badge, I am representing the people who raised me. I'm a firm believer that basic human decency and respect and kindness, until there is a need for me to shift that in uniform, is necessary. When politics lead policing, we're in trouble because the mindsets are already there to be negative or to be feuding or those people or them. And it's sad. It is disgusting. And I don't agree with it at all. There are many times when I'm standing and I'm talking to someone and I have a contact with someone and they're speaking about something to me. And in the moment, humorously, so I will say this, their breath is horrid. Far be it from me to say, you just suffered a loss, but you know what? You're bothering me because you need a met. And I'm saying that extreme and being facetious to a certain degree. But far be it from me to look at someone and because they're heavier, I don't want to give them the same service as I would someone who I would find, and I'm just making it up as I go. But because this person is not as attractive to me, or this person is white, or this person is black, or they are Latino, or they are, Pacific Islander. If I, in my mind, did my job that way, I would have been one miserable individual. We do not order from a menu who we're born into. So, the craziest thought in the world to me, and this is coming from a person who lost her own grandfather to ignorance and those isms that we were talking about. The craziest thing to me was that people hate and divide, and they use politics to stand behind and to do people wrong, or to make negative, nasty comments to people. It makes absolutely zero sense. And this topic incenses me because that's not what we're about. And that's not what we should stand for wearing the badge. There should be honor in that courage, that wisdom, that fairness, all of the things that we raise our hand to and swear to. And this is not it. what we're seeing in our world today, that shouldn't bleed over into policing at all. And I would challenge anyone to say, you're wrong in that. And I could
You
be
know,
way wrong, but those are my stances on that.
no, and you're absolutely, it's funny. I was at a, I guess the idea, let's just be candid here. I guess the idea is that most people believe that, or most law enforcement, I think, believe that law enforcement is very conservative, right? Law and order, you know. And it's funny, I was at an event last week, and I remember this guy was talking to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're a cop, so I know you support ICE and what they're doing, so what do you think about, bringing in the National Guard? Is that helpful if you?" I said, "Hold on." I said, "First of all, don't assume. I do not support ICE in the way that they're doing things." And I flat out told him, I said, "No, I don't agree with that. Um, and no, I don't think we need the National Guard." And you don't? You don't think? No. What did we need? What do we need the National Guard to come in and start policing neighborhoods for? And he looked at me, "Well, don't you think that's a good idea?" I said, "Explain to me why." And he couldn't. But that was just what was in his feed. That's what he was being told. And again, I think a lot of people, they pick party lines and then they believe whatever that party says and they go with it. But ask them to, when you really ask them if they have a educated idea or thought behind why they support it, a lot of times they can't articulate, exactly what it is. It's just that, oh, well, they said so. So, I believe it. And we really need those independent thinkers, and it's really bad when, again, like you said, it comes into policing, um, and it becomes an issue of whether or not, I mean, let's just be real. If you don't necessarily agree with what your partner says, can you, as a law enforcement officer, could they choose not to back you up? Could
Mhm.
they choose not to show up for you? And if you're in a certain neighborhood, are they gonna, with all those isms that we just talked about, like you said, that sign in there, could they choose to treat you differently and not give you the service that's needed or not give you the things that you require from public safety because of that political party? Absolutely. And I saw somebody said it's happening in
In
the
the
medical
medical.
in the
Yeah,
medical
that's
field,
scary. That's
you
very,
know.
very scary. But you also hear about people having certain ways. They have TikTok videos, and I've been seeing recently the short videos where they're showing on the screen the medical person doing their reporting, and they're typing in that one race of people was aggressive. And then another person is the same exact identical setup, and on the screen they type in, and it's they were curious about strongly curious about their medical care. And
Strongly
so it's like,
curious.
I'm like, aggressive versus strongly curious. And
They
you're
strongly advocated for themselves.
absolutely. And
Right.
the sad part about it is when that filters into our medical, into dental, into attorneys, into waiters, waitresses. Can you even imagine? The ugliness of all of that is why I say I think it's horrible. And the way that we treat people is important. I say don't wear a uniform. If you're going to
Yeah.
bring along and drag all that baggage of the ugliness of your hatred or your dislike or your disdain, or, I was raised this way and you can't fix me. There are more of us neighbor to neighbor than there are people sitting at the top of the organizations. That's within policing, that's within politics, and what you're doing on a daily basis with the person right next to you matters. I am a firm believer that we are not getting out of this without people finally putting down the rhetoric, putting down the sides of the aisle, and agreeing to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And having trained for several years, thousands of people, you're not taught that. Officers are not taught for all of this divisiveness. Somewhere along the lines, it's inserted by people who don't really want to do this job the right way. And an abuse of power in any level and in any setting is just flat out wrong. It really is. It doesn't serve
And,
anyone
and,
well.
and let me just say this, there's a saying out there that says, you want to see the true character of a person, give them power. And that's really what we give to peace officers. We give them the power to take freedom away. We give them the authority to take somebody out of their home, to put handcuffs on them. You know what I mean? They carry a gun. They have the authority to legally shoot somebody and use deadly force. So you want to see the character of a person, give them power, and that's what we see all too often in these negative encounters with law enforcement, going back to the media, going back to the bad press. What we see is a lot of times I see peace officers, well, do it because I told you to. Well, and sometimes they don't even know the law. But I just want to chat. I just want to say this, and I see in the chat, because this is a very interesting question. The question came at, can the police actually arrest ICE agents that don't provide ID identifying themselves? So I think it was just yesterday that I saw a video of, and I believe it was in Seattle area, Mr. Martin, where a police officer was at the window of, and all you could see is kind of a black SUV, and it was supposedly, at least the way the caption read, is that a police officer tells ICE they will arrest them. And what was happening based on the scenario was there was a protest that was going on, and the ICE agent wanted to drive their car through the protest, and the police officer stopped him and said, you will not drive your car into these protesters. You will back up and go the other way. And there was some exchange going on. He was like, if you drive in here, you will be arrested. And it was a short clip. I do not know how it ended. I do not know, because it was just, but it was a very interesting clip, which leads me to that question of, can we arrest them? You know what I mean? If they are not showing their ID. It's funny because I'm going to have some legal counsel look into this. I've already had some discussion regarding this, and there's supposed to be something here. Here's the reality of it, right? What if we can arrest them? What if we actually can? Let's just say, what if a local law enforcement officer can really arrest them and they do? What does that end up meaning for that individual officer, for that sergeant or lieutenant or whoever that signed off on their arrest, and for that agency in that city, when you have the president of the United States, a felon, let's just say it, that breaks the law, that comes in and says, you broke the law by stopping my people from breaking the law. So what I'm saying is, let's hear this out. It's absolutely legal, and you have the proper probable cause to make an arrest of an ICE agent, right? Let's just say you can do that, but then you have the very top that's going to come in and undo all of that. Because they can, because they're really just making up the laws as they go. They're breaking the law all the time, every day. That would be a huge, huge test. That would be a huge test. And I said, if agreed upon by the mayor and governor, you're covered, but the officer's covered by the Constitution. I know, but I mean, here's the reality of it. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. What I'm saying is that, what are the ramifications of that? So when you say the officer is covered by the Constitution, if that city loses federal funding, if that state loses federal funding, if that president, that administration sends in a federal agency, the FBI, and says that officer obstructed my federal law enforcement agents from doing their job, I want them arrested. The FBI comes in and actually arrests them for obstructing federal officers. They may win in the long run, but what's the end result? How long is that officer off? Did they lose their job? What did they have to go through? What's the turmoil? I'd be very interested in seeing, and I know that there are some laws that are being challenged and passed, and municipal codes where you can't do law enforcement without, having your name. You can't do it with a covered face, there are some states and counties that are working through these um, very scenarios right now. So it'll be very interesting to me. But I do look at it, and I just say this: for me, I would definitely challenge ICE and say, I need to know who you are. I don't know if you're just some mask, uh, uh, person that's. Why am I losing my words right now? But
Because
I don't.
we're coming to the end. We're
Yeah.
coming toward
Well,
the
I
end of
mean, you know what I
everything.
mean. I don't know if you're imitating ICE. I don't know who you really are.
Yeah.
I need to know who you are if you're going to be performing these kind of things and within my jurisdiction. And so I would challenge that. I absolutely would.
And I think this actual topic is going to be carried over into our next Code 3 conversations. And so I want to invite you to actually go back to and sign up and come back. Keep coming back and having the discussions. I will let you know, those of you who are on right now and those who will be looking at this later and watching the recording, that I am the product of, yes, sometimes pushing those envelopes actually nets a win. In 2001, my husband, who's on the screen with me, Eric, who's been speaking, ran for sheriff of Los Angeles County. I was politically targeted. I was labeled a bully. I was from Compton. I was throwing up gang signs. I actually grabbed a guy looking for tattoos, and the lies were stacked, and it was horrible. Fast forward, April of this year, I actually won the arbitration, and it was deemed that my contractual rights were violated and that I had been disciplined without just cause. I say that to say that now, fast forwarding, we have an election that's coming up in 2026, and he has decided to run once again. So I would be remiss if I did not say that I would love for you to at least give him a good look. His name is Eric Strong, but you can find him at strong, the number 4 sheriff.com. And I would welcome you taking a look at his platform. His resume is unmatched. And I believe that he would be the force that could turn this ship around. I am also C.C. Strong, and I have developed the 7 C's of survival and sustainability, a training for those before reaching for their gun belts. And I am working one-on-one with people who are in the profession or seeking to be in the profession to walk them through and let them know that they can survive the things that were meant to crash them. Believe it, it was a huge Goliath that I was up against, but my style of being mad and resilience, and I mean that in mentally, actively, demonstratively, and I document like crazy, it kept me from losing my job and from them destroying my entire 30 years that I gave for the people within the Los Angeles County. So I want to say, and Eric is putting some chats in the chat, the final thoughts. But I want to thank Miss Lights and Mr. Martin for joining us and coming on as panelists. You know that when we have people come and join the discussion, that is huge. That is exactly what Code 3 Conversations is all about. We want to have the conversations to know what people are thinking. And instead of having the feuding and the pointing and the fighting, we want to have the conversations that are respectful, transparent, truthful, straight up, whatever way you want to say them. And we welcome you being here. I'm going to fast forward through the remaining slides, and my team will make sure that we take a lot of what we spoke about today, and it would be report writing would have been our next topic had we have time, but I like to respect other people's time. And our time is for an hour and a half here with you. So the final thought is to let you know, and we're going to speed on through to
We're going to pick that one up next time, right? Can we talk about that?
exactly report writing,
Okay.
and then we have a couple of other things because it was brought up with the George Floyd, Rodney King. Some of the comments in the chat help us to formulate what we'll speak about the next time around. But this is my information. If you're wondering, hey, what inspired this young lady to do all of this and this platform, you can find me at ccstrong.com, and that gives you all of the other ways to connect. I would love to have a conversation with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We also have what's called the think tank, which you can join in and actually get a little bit deeper in that discussion and pick the brain of a candidate for sheriff, I say, because I'll make sure Eric's on those think tanks on the days that I can snag that time from him. I am so very thankful that you joined us today. Miss Lights, I cannot thank you enough. Mr. Martin, I cannot thank you enough. And I'm going to invite you back. Every second and fourth Wednesday of every month, we will be right here, same bat time, same bat channel, 6 p.m. PST. And we thank you. Miss Lights, you had something to say? A
Oh,
final
no,
thought.
I just want to thank you all for putting this platform together. It's a much needed conversation.
Thank you so much. Anything final from Martin, if you're still with us? You have a final thought?
There we go. Just had to turn the mic back on.
Oh,
I wanted to just mirror that. Thank you very much for this whole experience, because it's, as I've said, as you alluded to, we're in different times, kind of scary times, and without conversation, that's when you get assumptions. That's when you get your position assumed and handed to you by people that never asked you for it. And
absolutely.
and misunderstandings go to resentment very quickly.
Absolutely.
Well put. That couldn't close any better than that.
That was perfect. So we thank you and we look to see you back. And please invite other people to join us in this conversation, this Code 3 conversation. My team has shared the link in the chat for you. If you want to connect in, send me a message. Hey, would love to have you. So thank you for your time. We appreciate you and have a wonderful night.
Thank you
Good
both.
night.
Good night.